Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Wednesday, May 8th. It's 4:02 p.m. Eastern Time. That music is from a 1960s group, Love, and they actually did an album that was pretty big back then. Forever Changes. Only had one top 40 hit, but well reviewed. And the Dow Jones hit another all-time high today. Thankfully, I'm not short the market. Finished up 47 points to 15,104, up 0.3%. S&P 500 was up again to a new all-time high, 1632, up 6 points, 0.4%. NASDAQ was up 16 points to 3413, up 0.5%. See how this is slowly getting better? I spent about 4 hours watching, at least 4 hours watching the congressional testimony today, congressional hearing on Benghazi, and I greatly admire the whistleblowers critical of the State Department's handling of the September 11, 2012 attack. If I don't get to it today, I will certainly have more on Benghazi tomorrow. You can watch my video that I posted the other day. That issue of flight time from Aviano is a big one. Gold closed at $14.71, up $22. Oil $96.50. 10-year Treasury 1.77%. Today is Wednesday, Bull Bear Day. Bulls up to 52.1, Bears 19.8. So over that 30 spread between the two that normally is a danger signal, and it really hasn't been. Tokyo was up to another multi-year high. China up a bit. In China, exports rose 14.7% in April from a year earlier versus up 10% in March. Imports were up 16.8, up from 14.1 in March. Both figures are actually very good, better than expected, but do you believe them? Jiwei Zhang, chief China economist at Nomura in Hong Kong, said, "I have no strong conviction whether the data reflect reality." In recent months, Chinese export data has shown positive signs of a gradual recovery in external demand, but the problem is other Asian export countries such as South Korea and Taiwan have seen their export growth weaken amid slowing global demand. So who is telling the truth? In Frankfurt, the DAX equity index hit a new all-time high of its own. Industrial production in Germany rose 1.2% in March over February. A decline had been forecast. Yesterday I talked about factory orders in Germany rising in March as well. The Bundesbank says the German economy will expand 0.4% this year, which would be great compared to the rest of Europe. For example, Dutch industrial production declined 2% in March from February. Greece's stock exchange soared 6% today. Evidently, the European Union's bailout cash is rapidly on the way, and bank stocks soared in Greece about 25%. Of course, they had cratered about 90% before that. Syria. Big story today in a Wall Street Journal by Adam Entu and Julian Barnes. I just want to read a few excerpts. It's important. The Pentagon is stepping up plans to deal with a dangerous regional spillover from Syria's possible collapse, a scenario it had recently seen as remote, drawing up proposals including a Jordanian buffer zone for refugees secured by Arab troops, according to U.S. officials. The shift comes after Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel's trip last month to the Middle East, during which Arab leaders appealed to the United States to focus on the danger of Syria's disintegration into warring sectarian fiefdoms. The Syria message was loud and strong, said a senior diplomat briefed on Hagel's trip. Everybody's scared, and nobody knows what the hell we are going to do there. A buffer zone along the Syria-Jordan border, if put into effect, would provide a way to shelter a Syrian refugee population that is overwhelming Jordan. As I have been saying, forever it seems, the prospect of a Syrian breakup was raised Tuesday by Secretary of State John Kerry, who met in Moscow with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in an attempt to move Syria's warring sides toward a negotiated solution. Mr. Kerry told reporters, "The alternative is that there is even more violence. The alternative is that Syria heads closer to an abyss, if not over the abyss and into chaos. The alternative is that there may even be a breakup of Syria." No kidding. It's taken him 2 years to understand this. Mr. Hagel came away from the trip, which also included stops in Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, seeing storm clouds on the horizon, one of Mr. Hagel's advisors said. Last week, Hagel, of course, became the first U.S. official to say publicly that the administration was weighing arming the rebels. The contingency planning shows the extent to which Pentagon leaders now see a breakup as a real threat to U.S. interest in the region. Providing support to rebels risked inadvertently arming forces allied to al-Qaeda. Standing back could lead to a disorderly collapse, including the possibility that jihadist militias emerge with territory to govern. The potential for a disruptive spillover has spurred renewed interest in ideas the Pentagon and White House had previously ruled out. Americans for now envision any buffer zone being set up on Jordanian soil where U.S. troops could be stationed. Some Jordanian officials want it to be on Syrian territory, U.S. officials say, which would limit the involvement of American personnel. Jordan has taken in at least 520,000 refugees so far. I know exactly, I've been to the border area with Syria. That was 3 or 4 years ago. Pretty ugly area. General Ray Odierno, the Army Chief of Staff, said on Tuesday, Syria affects so much of the Middle East, nothing happens independently in the Middle East. If we don't get this right, it could change the whole face of the Middle East. I will just say on the Benghazi hearings, Gregory Hicks, the second-ranking U.S. diplomat in Libya at the time of the attack, is one of the 3 whistleblowers testifying today. Talking about the airplane talking about a U.S. response if we had been prepared to prevent the second attack. There was a large time gap between the first attack that took out the first 2, and then the second attack that took out the 3rd and 4th U.S. personnel. He said in previous testimony to the congressional investigators, a fast mover flying over Benghazi at some point, as soon as possible, might very well have prevented some of the bad things that happened that night. Again, I'll get into more details tomorrow as far as a timeline. You want an example of the third world versus the developed world in Pakistan. Recall, huge election this weekend. This will be the first supposed peaceful changeover in power in Pakistan's history as a democracy. Imran Khan, now he's the charismatic cricketer turned politician, cricket star turned politician, was taken to the hospital last night after falling from a lift at an election rally in Lahore. Now, Imran Khan, I would say, is probably number 2 in the polls heading into the election that will result in a new prime minister. So this improvised platform on a forklift truck, tipped as it's reaching the stage, tipped over just before he was due to address thousands of supporters in the country's second largest city. Khan tumbled about 11 feet head first. I know about falling head first, but I didn't fall 11 feet, and dashed his head on a set of speakers. Television footage showed blood pouring from a wound to his head as he was carried, apparently unconscious, to a car, which sped him to hospital. It was reported that there was this is classic for Pakistan. It was reported that there was no ambulance nor first aid kit at the event. And what did I describe to you the other day about how this whole campaign has been one bombing after another at these campaign stops and political rallies? They had no ambulance there, or a first aid kit. Within an hour, party officials and his former wife, Jemima Khan, said that he had recovered consciousness and was talking, and I did see a video of him talking from the hospital. He had many stitches for his head wound, but doctors have told him he's got to now stay off the campaign trail for the rest of the week. He was to hold 8 rallies last night, and then he was going to be traveling all over the country in a helicopter and private plane. All events were canceled. He was doing 14 events today. So, no one knows how this is going to impact the election because, of course, he has such a large sympathy vote, you would think. A surge in support for Mr. Khan could thwart the ambitions of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who had been thought to be the man most likely to benefit from the backlash against President Zardari's regime right now. But who knows? Death toll in Bangladesh from the garment factory up to 761. China's top newspaper on Wednesday published a call for a reconsideration of Japan's sovereignty over the island of Okinawa. This comes from a lead article in the People's Daily. The authors are scholars at what is considered to be China's top state-run think tank. It repeated Chinese government arguments for China's historical claims over a set of tiny uninhabited islets in the East China Sea, known as Diaoyu in Chinese and Senkaku in Japanese. Talked about those before, but the big thing is these scholars are recommending China reopen discussions with Japan over Okinawa. Okay, yesterday I talked about 4 more people in China died of the bird flu, bringing to 31. World Health Organization said it has no evidence that the new strain of bird flu, the H7N9, is easily transmissible between humans. But scientists said on Wednesday, it's a little different, that flu infections were rising among pigs raised for slaughter on farms in south and southeastern China, also plagued by the bird flu. And the risk of spillover to humans was constant or growing, according to one of the authors of a study published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Pigs, of course, are an important source of new human strains of influenza A, such as the 2009-2010 H1N1 pandemic that emerged in Mexico, though that was not a lethal virus. It ended up being more of an ordinary seasonal flu, but it was highly infectious. An article in the science journal Nature highlighted that H7N9, back to the bird flu virus, seems to be circulating in areas of China that have large populations of pigs and humans, providing opportunities for further adaptation to mammals and for reassortment with human or pig adapted viruses. A team analyzed the results of tests of virus infection at time of slaughter at these abattoirs, as well as tests for antibodies which would indicate the pig had previously been infected and was now immune. They observed a drop in positive virus tests by the time the pigs reached the abattoir, but worryingly concluded this did not mean there was less infection. Instead, according to James Lloyd Smith of UCLA, it reflects higher rates of influenza circulation on the farms where pigs are raised, so that they have already been infected, and so they're immune by the time they're going to slaughter. However, you have an item that I mentioned in my week in review column that I went down on record here. Chinese scientists, this is from the Global Security Newswire. Chinese scientists have modified avian influenza to spread rapidly through the air between guinea pigs by incorporating genetic material from a human version of the virus, according to the journal Science. The team created 127 H5N1 bird flu strains with varying amounts of genetic code from the virus behind the H1N1 swine flu human pandemic in 2009. A prominent British scientist swiftly condemned the study, led by Chen Yuan of the Harbin Veterinary Research Institute in China. They claim they are doing this to help develop vaccines and such. In fact, the real reason is that they are driven by blind ambition with no common sense whatsoever, said Robert May, a former top scientific advisor to the British government. The record of containment in labs like this is not reassuring. They are taking it upon themselves to create human-to-human transmission of very dangerous viruses. It's appallingly irresponsible. Unfreaking real. I may get into the Saudi Arabia bit tomorrow, but that's all for tonight. I'll be back with you Thursday. Keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. Bye-bye.
Crowds of people standing everywhere. Cross the street down at the slum affair. And here they always play my song.